Greetings, fellow commanders and former commanders, friends, citizens, and enemies. I'm Hong Long from Hong Long Wuxia, and I would like to start off by saying welcome, each and every one, to my second video dedicated to Elite Dangerous, a science fiction space simulation. I received not a few comments on the previous video, both here and in other social media, and I will attempt to address most of them. But there were a few criticisms that were couched in such bad grammar, it was difficult to actually understand what they were trying to say. And there were as well a few ad hominem attacks by some of the petulant, although in some cases I was unable to actually discern whether they were directed at me or at others in the thread. So for now, we'll just skip over those. For those of you who have accused me of being a, quote, fanboy, you must have simply guessed as to the content of my video from the title and the comment thread, and you did not actually watch the video wherein I criticized Frontier for issuing a game that was not ready, one that was buggy as hell, that not only did not deliver on the promised graphics upgrades, but in many respects the results of their machinations had the opposite effect, the somewhat cartoonish appearance of some planets and moons being an actual downgrade. And of course, worst of all, the incessant crashes, which made Odyssey almost impossible to even play. As I said, most of these issues were resolved with the 5th update. Again, for those who find paying attention difficult, I will repeat, most of these issues were resolved with the 5th update. The crashes especially, but the graphics and for those of you who still haven't played since the 6th update the other day, there has been an exponential increase in the visual appeal of the game. I had also said that I was really not into the first-person shooter aspect. I've completed a grand total of 1 mission, and I was killed in 4, after which I was able to enjoy the bug of losing the use of my ship for a while. That being said, I do read social media posts, and I do watch a number of YouTubers and other streamers, and I know a number of sides to this issue. But suffice to say, since I have not, for the most part, participated in that aspect of the game, I'll leave that for others to debate. I will, however, reiterate that I have seen a number of people say that the first-person shooter aspect has been fixed and they are enjoying it, and others who say that the FPS still has quite a long way to go before it's fixed. In addition, on the topic of first-person shooter, one commenter was upset that the FPS aspects did not break any new ground, that there were no elements of the Elite Dangerous FPS gameplay mechanics that differed in any way from anything that has come before. I never claimed that it did, and I don't believe Frontier did either, but as I am not a fanboy, I would not be able to say that for sure. And if that is your standard for an expansion or even a new game, then that's on you. The aspect of space legs that I do use for exobiology and just for running, flying, or hopping around on a planet works quite well. Although another quality of life issue that I did not raise last time, other than crossplay, would be being able to sample more than one biological signal at a time. Those canisters aren't that big, and you should be able to keep at least 4 of them in a small backpack. Also, the geological stuff seems, I say seems as I've only landed once since Update 6, to collect materials. It seems to have been at least improved. The last time I was able to farm from 8 different sources in one area instead of the previous high of 2. And if not the oldest game in existence, with a semantic claim that I should have used the term franchise instead. I'd posit that the Odyssey is as much removed from the Elite published in December 2014 as that version was from the previous versions I played. They had the same flight mechanics, same ugly orange HUD, but it wasn't an open world game. The last version that I had played before I picked it up again last year, they had just introduced laser mining without collector limits, so it behooved you to learn how to scoop up the minerals as they were blasted off the asteroid, instead of trying to scoop them while they were all scattered about. And that version was even more removed from the version that came out in 1984. It is still the same game. It has just evolved over time, and it will continue to evolve unless, of course, the policy of herd immunity being carried out by the world's ruling elites leads to the complete collapse of civilization as we know it. And just to be clear, so you know, I think those not a part of the ruling elites will put a stop to that policy well before that happens. blueprints. Few people brought up criticisms of the game being too much of a grind. There were two aspects to this. One, that the game is a grind in itself, and if you feel that way, then you are probably not playing the right game or the right type of game. Perhaps you should shy away from RPGs completely. And two, that you had to grind to do anything in the game. If you want to jump into a fleet carrier after a few months or weeks, depending on your gaming time, or if you want to compete PvP with people who have been playing the game for years, or if you want to reach such and such a goal in as short a time as possible, then yes, probably everything you do in the game is going to be a grind. The actual grind you speak of should be an end in itself, whether collecting materials, exploring, bounty hunting, mining in its various forms, xeno hunting, performing various missions, what have you. If it starts to feel like a grind, then maybe move on to something else. I just did the Rabigo run the other day for about 40 minutes and then moved on to the one I think real grind in the game, and that would be the Jameson crash site. But that lasts about 15 minutes, 20 minutes before I maxed out, and then I was off to do something else. In my case, I will be purchasing a ship and relearning combat and trying out one of the Alliance ships probably. And yes, in solo, as I suck, and the only thing I've engineered on this account is my frame shift drive. There are other elements that could also be categorized as a grind, but unlike in most games, for Elite, many of these are necessary to learn how to play the game. For instance, the rescuing refugees from burning stations, that could be a grind, doing it over and over. But it is a great way to learn to dock and to leave the starport on your own. And the visuals are really cool. And for those of you clamoring for immersions, well, yeah, the Guardian blueprints are also a bit of a grind. But after just going through that again recently, it was fun, and it helped me to learn to pilot the SUV with the joystick instead of the controller. Speaking of grind, that leads us into the next topic, which is, once again, on ship interiors. First of all, the claim was made that YouTube creators are split 50-50 over ship interiors. While I find that to be the case in most social media forums, and actually I see kind of leaning the other way, slightly, not a lot, I do find that to be the case with YouTube creators. None of the YouTubers I watch, or any that I have ever watched, or any of them that I subscribe to, have been against ship interiors. Or more specifically, let me couch that, have come out against ship interiors. And most of them, especially the channels I subscribe to and watch the most, are a pretty eclectic mix. And while I strongly disagree with just about everything each one of them has to say in regard to ship interiors, they, and especially my favorite one, the Yamiks, make quite a few legitimate criticisms. And I say this even though there are quite a few with which I disagree, as I have outlined already. They should be taken seriously though, even though his delivery isn't always that serious. And many YouTubers have put out videos expressly demanding or surreptitiously demanding that Frontier put in ship interiors. I just watched a video in which a number of YouTubers said that they would be playing Star Citizen until and unless Frontier gave us ship interiors. Although while the creator of the video himself suggested it, he did not demand it. There were a few people who claimed that other than running through the ship and looking at dead furniture, combat aboard ship, and running through the ship to get to the cockpit to blast off before going down in a hail of laser or missile-induced death, there were a number of other ways that interiors would add to gameplay and immersion. Now, a few of these, while I agree they may increase immersion, I disagree with this, that the suggestion would be adding to gameplay in any way, other than adding a grind to end all grinds. And others, I agree, will add to the gameplay and the immersion, but they have absolutely nothing to do with ship interiors. Before I get into these suggestions, let me broach something else that is related, and that is comparisons to Star Citizen, No Man's Sky, and EVE Online. all different games except for Star Citizen, which isn't quite a game yet, as it's still in alpha, for the past 10 years too. And it went into pre-production in 2010, so actually this thing's been on the board for quite some time, and it's still not a game. Its budget is in the tens of millions of dollars, and until the beginning of July, the general consensus was that it was unplayable. Since then, however, many of the ship interior folk who have been yelling at Frontier at the top of their lungs how great Star Citizen is and how they won't return unless Frontier implements interiors. That is, with the exception of one former Elite Dangerous creator that I watch regularly, the Mighty Jingles, who went to Star Citizen and reported that while it does have some new features and looks very nice, it's still too unstable to play. Can you smell that? If the game is that good, why are they not playing En masse before Odyssey? If the game is that good, why are they bothering yelling at Frontier to making Elite more like their new alpha game that they are enjoying so much? If I found a game that I enjoyed more and was similar, I would be off without bothering to yell at the first guy. I used to be really into real-time strategy games. The first game I ever bought for PC was Warcraft. But when Command & Conquer came out, I didn't bitch at Blizzard. And when Age of Empires came out later, I didn't bitch at Westwood. And then when StarCraft and Total Annihilation came out, I didn't complain to Microsoft. I moved on. Methinks they aren't moving on quietly because there's nothing to move on to. At least not as far as Star Citizen goes. No Man's Sky, that might be a different story. I have the game, but I have yet to even play it, as it used to look way too cartoonish. The recent update makes it look better, but the graphics do not even compare to Elite in my view. EVE Online, now that's another matter entirely. I've seen quite a few videos of that, and that looks absolutely gorgeous. But from what I understand, well, it's free to play now. It's all about the downloadable content. And I haven't seen any videos with very good frame rates of the battles, which, I mean, that looks like the reason to be playing that. If those have improved, I might try it out, but while it's a space game, it offers a vastly different vision than that of Elite Dangerous. One of the most immersive mediums known to man is the novel. Yet, the great novel, or even a mediocre novel, it does not make you deal with the everyday grind of its main character. If it did, the Christian Bible would be one of the shortest books ever assembled. There's a reason we don't read about every time our protagonist has a drink of water, brushes his hair, licks his lip, goes to the bathroom, etc. We only read of these things when it has a bearing on what's actually occurring in the plot. Someone who adds these things as filler is what is known as a hack, not a novelist. In much the same way, while there are a number of things which can add to the immersion in Elite Dangerous, they do nothing to add to the gameplay and instead create a grind of the most annoying sort. The sort that must be performed no matter what. I've already detailed walking around from one ship to the other each time you enter and disembark. A suggested fix for that was to toggle it on and off. That would be workable, but why? When there are so many other things that FDev could be working on to make this game actually better. One person commented that it's much the same as walking through a hangar, and yeah, it is. I don't like doing that either, especially after 20 times. I mean, that's a good 20 seconds to a minute of time wasted that could be better spent elsewhere. I'd rather just pop out into the lobby or an elevator. If I wanted to measure my ship, I'll do it when I land on a planet, when I can actually get on top of it and move around, back up, see it, and do all that stuff. And speaking of immersion, 2 words: magnetic boots. Think about it for a while. Another wanted to load his cargo every time. Really? Have fun loading 500 tons or unloading it. Seriously? That kind of thing would be handled by port workers, which I am sure 1,000 years in the future will be fully automated. Grindy. But you want to add that kind of grind? Yeah, no thank you. How about turning into a survival game and requiring eating, drinking, and relieving oneself? How about sleep too? Yeah, I think you get the picture. I mean, there's a reason a lot of that stuff went to the wayside after Ultima passed into the netherworld. I think you get the picture here, though. There are a number of ways to add to the immersion and make it an existentially boring exercise, not a game. Then there were some suggestions which would increase immersion and gameplay, with which I agree wholeheartedly. They do not, however, have anything to do with ship interiors. The first of which, extravehicular activity, or EVA, should be self-explanatory. EVA would be a great addition to the game, floating outside of your ship just for kicks, or to repair your hull, and save you a module spot for exploration, or even to take part in combat. I mean, these would be great features to add to the game, but sadly, they take place outside of your ship. Ergo, EVA has absolutely nothing to do with ship interiors. Salvage and mining was also brought up, and again, nothing to do with interiors. These things all happen on the exterior of player ships, including salvage operations on a capital ship, access to which, as far as I understand, players do not have. The size of which would also be more akin to a fleet carrier or a station, not the ship in which you are flying around. So, in conclusion, the totality of the arguments in favor of interiors comes down to boarding and fighting, which I dealt with in the previous video, and which nobody attempted to convincingly argue against, and was only attempted by one individual that I saw. Being able to not only see your cargo, but to load it and running through the ship. That's it! A Tempest in a Teapot is more than an apt description for what is going on here.